Senate's mock presidential debate this evening. Tonight, the role of President Barack Obama will be played by senior Michael Robertson. Michael is a proud member of the Young Democrats on our campus, and he is majoring in environmental biology with a minor in sustainability. The role of Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney will be played by Jacob Werner. Jacob is a sophomore, member of the Young Republicans, and is majoring in molecular biology. And your debate moderator for tonight's event is our very own news director for the Clarion University TV station, Matt Knoedier. He is a junior and communications major at Clarion. I want you all to know that tonight's event is not intended to have a winner between the two students debating this evening. They will not be representing their own opinions or views in any of these matters. It is more to inform you of the key issues in this debate and to allow you to make an educated choice in the elections on Tuesday. The opinions that will be mentioned tonight came directly from the presidential candidates or their administrations. It is our hope that this debate will better inform you and just help you with your choice. And with that, I will turn things over to Matt.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you all for being here tonight. Before we begin tonight's debate, I just want to give you the breakdown of how the debate will go tonight. First, for each question, I will ask the question to the first candidate. They will have 3 minutes to respond, and then from there, the opposing candidate will have a time for a 1-minute rebuttal. I will then re-ask the question to the next candidate, and they will have 3 minutes for their first response, and then their opponent will have time for a 1-minute rebuttal of their own. We did a coin toss to give each candidate the opportunity to decide which candidate would go first for their opening statements, and President Obama won, and he will have the floor.
I'd like to thank everybody that came out today to this debate. I'm sure you guys are all aware that you guys will be asked to make a difficult decision in this next week. You guys are going to be asked to decide whose vision for this great nation you want to support. And it's times like these where we as Americans must come together, regardless of our political affiliations, and decide what is best for this country. I believe that investing in the middle class causes communities to flourish. And I don't think we should wait around, allow the middle class to wait around for what might trickle down. I believe in a strong and affordable education system and not giving additional tax cuts to the rich. I believe in the idea that all Americans are equal and deserve affordable health care, regardless of gender, income, or pre-existing conditions. I believe that we should invest in the people that don't have a voice, because those individuals can become our greatest assets. During my work as a community organizer in 1985, I saw the power that hope has, and that how far someone can go if you just help them with that first step. And today, I still carry that hope with me. I see it making change. I see through the advertisements and the name callings how much hope can do. We still have a ways to go, but if we stand together, there's no way that America can fail. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now we'll give Governor Romney a time for an opening statement of his own.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank everybody for coming out. It's good to see students, especially young voters, come out and research their own candidates so they can take up the choice that they can best fits them and best fits the country. The Romney plan basically falls down into two large categories. We need to cut our spending, and we need to stop growth, and then, we need to cut our spending, and we need to focus on growing and step back from the rest of the spending that the Obama administration has been putting forward. This can be outlined in 5 simple points that I've outlined for my presidency. First of all, this includes energy independence from other nations around the world and focusing on bringing in our own energies, whatever they happen to may be. The second point revolves around education, making sure that our workers in our country are highly trained and we can make college affordable for all. Third is increasing trade for foreign. This includes opening up trade to places like Latin America and includes mandating and sanctioning countries like China and India that are cheating on their foreign trade. Fourth point revolves around cutting deficit. This is the most important point in my debate, and you'll see it come up a lot. Cutting the deficit, cutting back the GDP, or capping the GDP at under 20% growth is critical to sustaining America throughout these hard economic times. And finally, bringing back small businesses. We're facing the lowest the lowest drop in small businesses in the last 30 years. And that's something we need to be focusing on to bring back the jobs to the United States so we can focus on growing. Keep notice throughout the debate as I bring back these points and tie them all together, and especially in how these points all work together and focus on cutting spending and bringing growth to the United States.
Thank you, Governor. And we will now move to our first topic and what has been the driving topic in this entire campaign, the jobs and the economy here in the United States. And this first question will go to the President Obama. The question, Mr. President, what would you do in this term to improve the economy and create more jobs for American citizens? And you'll have 3 minutes.
I think the subject of jobs is one that has everybody kind of worried. They want to see jobs available for them and jobs that are going to pay them well. So I think the first step in doing that is in continuing to invest in the private sector. In addition to the 2.5 million jobs that have already created in my first term, I want to continue to invest in these small businesses by providing tax incentives. Let's give companies tax incentives to hire more employees and to give the employees that already work there higher wages. And we can do that by eliminating tax roll wages on the first $50 million earned. That's huge. In addition to investing in the private sector, I think it's important to put American workers back into a job. And then at the same time that we do that, by modernizing America. I just passed a tax credit that allowed veterans and wounded warriors to come back into work, and companies that hire them will receive tax breaks. Let's get those individuals back here to our public land as cops and firefighters, still serving our nation. In addition, I want to stop the layoff of almost 300,000 teachers. Teachers are the fundamental aspect to having a strong educational system. And at the same time, we can modernize our classrooms by having schools that have internet access in each classroom, by having classrooms with science labs to encourage the growth in engineers and scientists and in all fields of the sciences. And at the same time, I want to renovate and upgrade over 35,000 schools across the United States in rural and urban areas at the same time. In addition, I want to modernize the infrastructure that is here. I want to make sure our roads are better, our railroads, our waterways, our subways, our airports. And at that point, when we're doing that, we're making this country better, we're also providing hundreds of thousands of jobs to people. We're putting American workers back into jobs. In addition, I want to invest in research. I want to create an initiative where we're making about 15 to 20 institutions that bring together research universities and businesses to collaborate and provide the next generation of products, whether that's medicine, technology, or whatever it may be. And those institutes are going to require people. They're going to require researchers, and they're going to require business majors to come in there and help make these things run. And that's pretty much my plan for getting American workers back into jobs.
Thank you, Mr. President. Governor Romney, you'll have time for a 1-minute rebuttal.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to address the points that Mr. Obama has made about things like updating and restructuring. You'll notice that a lot through the points that the president makes through his debates focuses on putting money into things in the hopes that we'll get something out of it. This is the wrong plan we need to be focusing on for the United States. We need to be cutting back spending and focusing on growing slowly. Mr. Obama has proposed plans that we invest money and dump a bunch of money into programs like modernizing and putting into infrastructure. This is not the road we need to be going on. We need to be focusing on making it easier for the middle class to get into colleges and become more trained rather than focusing on giving these colleges and other institutions more money. We need to be focusing on making sure that workers can get their training properly so they can become a niche system in the United States job system. Mr. Obama has also proposed in the past a road down to manufacturing. I'd like to point out that the way we cannot approach the United States job infrastructure through manufacturing. We simply don't have the resources or the people that other countries competing with us, such as China or India, have, who also cheat on the regulations and have low rights for their workers.
All right, Governor, again, I'll ask you the same question I asked the President. What would you do in this term, the next 4 years, of course, to improve the economy and create more jobs for American citizens? You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to point out that Mr. Obama's record shows that he cannot promote jobs or grow jobs. First includes 4 million jobs lost, and as he promised in his 2008 election that he would raise employment over 8%. This has yet to happen. We have yet to see a growth over 8%, and that's something we need to be focusing on. And notice that Mr. Obama, no matter what puts forward, has this poor record behind him, which he cannot back up. Apart from that, I created 40,000 jobs in my last year as governor of Massachusetts. That was only in 1 year. I have a record of promoting jobs, and I know the plans in order to get there. Furthermore, you'll notice how these points tie together in terms of deficit and economy and promoting jobs through education. Energy independence brings 4 million jobs to the United States. Energy independence includes programs like Marcellus Shale and natural gas, and programs that we know are successful and economically viable. We also need to be focusing on increasing trade with Latin America and sanctioning places like China, as I mentioned before. We also need to be focusing on small businesses, which are at a 30-year low, under the Obama, we need to promote the small businesses again. America's future is based around well-trained workers and educating our workforce. This is critical so we can be non-competitive with countries like China and be able to promote our own jobs without having to force down wages and cut costs so we can make our products more viable. We also need to cut middle-class taxes. The middle-class income is down by $45,000 under the Obama administration. This is unacceptable. This is something we need to be focusing on primarily. Without the middle class, we cannot have jobs, and we cannot have these small businesses necessary to create these jobs. 54% of all jobs in the United States are created by small businesses. And finally, Obama's tax code for the 54% of small businesses who, under the Obama tax code, 54% of small businesses pay individual taxes instead of paying corporate taxes. This is unacceptable. We need to be focusing on increasing or simplifying the tax code so that small businesses recognize the tax cuts that they have and are able to take advantage of them.
All right, thank you, Governor. And President, you have 1 minute for a rebuttal to the governor's statements.
I'd like to highlight on a few things that Governor Romney has said. He said that I didn't create any jobs. I created 5.2 million jobs in the private sector in my first term alone. In addition, I created over 400,000 jobs in manufacturing, over 1 million jobs in the auto industry, which has now come roaring back. He says he has the plan. He has a plan for us. I want to see some numbers. I want to see a plan. I don't want to see a generalized list. Let me know what you're planning on doing for this country. I think it's important to pay attention to the small details. We have a big picture, but let's look at the finer things. Let's see how this is really going to work out.
We'll now move on to a topic very important to many of you in the audience, that being higher education. Of course, the recent economic and budget maladies have impacted both state and federal funding of educational needs across the board, specifically that of higher education. Governor Romney, this question will first start with you, and the question is, what do you see as a vital step for the future of our educational system? And if it's not continuing the system we have so far, what changes would you like to see made?
There are some things about our current education system that I like, and there's some things that I would like to see cut out. For example, something that I would like to see kept in is the Pell Grant. I would like to see that continue growing. And apart from that, back when I was in Massachusetts, we had a system where if you were in the top 25 of your class in high school, you got 4 years of college for free. That's something I'd like to see brought nationally. Apart from that, this all ties in back to my secure job training for the United States. This is why education is critical and making sure education is accessible to the middle class. Education is currently controlled by 47 different government agencies. 47, which means institutions like colleges and universities have to go through so much red tape and end up getting tangled in it and cannot help their students and are too busy focusing on paperwork that the incumbent administration has kept in. We need to separate out those 47 agencies to the states and give those to the states so they can more efficiently run them. I'd also like to retain the best and brightest for the United States in terms of education and people graduating from college. This would be done through programs like growing small businesses, as I mentioned before, and also includes lowering the taxes so people are able to hire these people who are fresh out of college. I was in Philadelphia recently, and I met a girl there who said that Mr. Romney, I'm working 3 jobs and I'm just out of college, but there are no jobs around for specifically where I'm working for, and I'm working minimum wage. What can you do to help me? And she's exactly right. The United States has a glut of people who are graduating from college but do not have the resources or the jobs available to seek those out. My Massachusetts plan, I'd also like to make college cheaper and make it more accessible to the middle class. This would include lowering rates that initially the colleges charge in order to get into their institutions, and that's something I'd like to see change as well.
All right, Mr. President, you'll have 1 minute to respond to the governor's statements.
I'd first like to highlight on the first thing that Governor Romney has said. He said he'd like to encourage the Pell Grant to grow. That's simply not true. His Vice President, Paul Ryan, has voted 11 times against increasing the Pell Grant. 11 times. And he's voted against decreasing the interest rates on those loans. Now, there is really no plan to increase them, as you've heard. He just talks about lowering taxes. But let me talk about something that I did. In our 2010 Health and Education Act, I instituted a program called IBR. IBR is known as the Income-Based Repayment. That means when you get out of here, as fresh college graduates, you're going to have what? Rent to pay, car payments, you got to put food in the refrigerator. And then on top of that, you have to pay back your loans. The IBR says instead of getting a $500 loan payment from the interest and the loans that you've taken out to get an education, all you have to pay is 10% of your income. 10%. And if you work on a public service job and you make your payments on time for the first 10 years, after those 10 years, you're going to receive the rest of your debt forgiven. Now, you'll be like, what if I don't work in a public service job? Well, if you make your loan payments on time and everything's as it is, after 20 years, you'll see that. You'll see it all forgiven.
Mr. President, we're going to have to, well, we'll have to cut you off. I'll ask the question. You can give time for your plans here in just a moment. Again, what do you see as a vital step for the future of our educational system? And if you don't agree with what is in place, the current system, what changes would you like to see made? And you have 3 minutes.
In extension to what I said, sorry about running over, let's invest $4.7 million in minority institutions and HBCUs, which are historically black universities. Those count for about 4% of the workers that come out into the field. Let's also invest $2 billion, in community colleges. Community colleges work directly with businesses and corporations that tailor students to fit the job. So as soon as they're graduated, they come out and they already have a job. Let's also look at keeping the interest rates low. I mean, education needs to be affordable, and if we're telling our students, go out there and go get an education, and then when you're out of school, you're going to be swamped with debt that you're paying. That doesn't seem to make sense, does it? At the same time, Governor Romney said about Pell Grants. Under my administration, the Pell Grants has increased to $5,635, an all-time high. That helps over 3 million students go to school. Let's talk about investing in better programs. As I said, having better classrooms, renovating schools that need to be upkept. Those are just some of the things that I believe that help this education system get better.
Governor, we'll give you 1 minute to respond to the President's plans.
Thank you. If you had noticed, and I'm doing the calculations throughout Mr. Obama's speech, you would have started tallying up the amount of money he's willing to put into the education system already. As I like to point out, the $2 billion that he wishes to invest in community colleges, plus the $4.5 you said, $1 billion he wished to invest in minority schools, and
yes,
I believe there was another $2 billion in there for another program. So I believe if there was another 2.5, I'm sorry. We're up to about $9 billion that Mr. Obama is planning to give to the education system. As I've been saying in the previous debate, Mr. Obama is looking at the problem incorrectly. We need to be looking on how to cut spending instead of forgiving debts and being able to throw money at problems that we really don't have a solution for. We need to be focusing on making it to get cheaper into colleges to begin with. That's where the economy needs to grow. We need to be focusing on making sure that all these, that the college kids have jobs when they get out of college. Mr. Obama, yet in his education, has included anything that he's willing to propose that makes sure that these jobs are available after college.
All right. We're going to move on now to, you both bring up debt. That's a good segue into our next topic, of that being the deficit, entitlement reform, and the national debt. Of course, when broken down, each American citizen owes more than $51,000 of our national debt. Each taxpayer owes more than $141,000. Mr. President, we'll start with you on this topic. What are your plans to reduce our nation's budget deficit and national debt?
I think the first step in reducing our deficit is to first allow the tax Bush credits to expire. And those Bush credits that are currently going on right now are the same the tax credits that got us into this economic crisis in the first place. Top-down policies, giving tax cuts to millionaires. And if you guys want to know something ironically, they're the same tax cuts that Governor Romney wants to support, giving himself more tax breaks. In addition, I think it's important that we responsibly end the war in Iraq. Using this money, we'll save money from ending this war, and we use half of that money to invest on the deficit, pay that off, and then use the other half to invest in governmental programs. The plan is, with the Obama administration, to decrease the deficit by $4 trillion by means of closing corporate loopholes, spending cuts that have already been enacted within my first term, winding down the war, health and mandatory initiatives, and asking the wealthier to pay a little bit more. And I'd like to go back to an additional point that Governor Romney said earlier, and he said that the middle class is being crushed by my legislation. That's simply not true. Under my legislation, the middle class family has seen an increase in their income by $3,600. Now, Governor Romney also said that he will not raise taxes for the middle class. I think that's interesting. When he was asked what he thought the middle class was, he responded, families that make $200,000 to $250,000 a year. I'm not sure what America Governor Romney's been living in, but that does not sound like middle class to me. It sounds like upper class. And we all know he's not going to increase the taxes for the wealthy. So I think it's important to look at, if you think the middle class is families that make between $30,000 to $80,000 a year, he is going to increase those taxes. His plan only incorporates closing corporate loopholes to decrease it by $5 trillion. And then he wants to give the defense program $2 trillion, $1 trillion more than they're asking for. So what can you see if you fall in between that $30,000 to $80,000 a year? You can see an additional $2,000 coming out of your pocket, paying in taxes. In addition, we all know they said he was going to cut PBS, say goodbye to Big Bird, but he's also planning on defunding Planned Parenthood. Now, what that means is ladies who use birth control as a method to regulate their menstrual cycle, who use it as a method of prevention, or who use it to prevent the development of ovarian cyst. That means more money out of your pocket. That means over 800 clinics across the United States will be shut down. For example, Adagio, defunding that, tons of Clarion students use that. And that's my point.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. Governor, I'll give you a minute to respond to what the president has said.
First of all, I'd like to clarify what the Romney tax plan is. I'd like to reassure that we are not extending the Bush tax cuts, and in fact, the plan is to make it not top-down. We want to cut loopholes for the upper class. We do not want to increase taxes. For the middle class, it's key that we lower the taxes, and it's also important that we need to look at Mr. Obama's record in terms of what he's been saying and what he's actually done. We have a $16 trillion deficit that's only been raised and increased by under the Obama administration. His plans include asking the rich to pay more. The rich that we have right now in the United States, as I cited my 54%, the rich in the United States are the job creators that we need. The job creators we need to extend the economy and bring us back into the slow growth. We don't need to keep spending and taking money from the upper class in order to make this happen.
All right, Governor, again, I'll ask you the same question I asked President Obama. What are your plans to reduce our nation's deficit and ultimately the national debt?
First of all, I'd like to discuss what I was doing in Massachusetts, and I'd like to point that out as my record. Under Massachusetts, I went into office with a $3 billion deficit. When I left office 4 years later, I had a $2 billion surplus left in the economy. I know what I'm doing in terms of how to run a government and how to make sure that we can save money. I'd also like to talk about we need to be cutting out of the fat. Mr. Obama mentioned PBS as one of my things. The reality is we need to be cutting all programs. All non-defense programs need to be cut by 5% in order for us to cut back and cut the fat that we currently have in our spending budget for the United States. I'd also like to balance the budget and making sure that we need to cap the spending that the United States government is spending each year 20% below what our GDP brings in. This is critical to making sure we can actually grow instead of, as Mr. Obama's plan is just to continue taking money and spending money in order to try to fix the problem. Also, I plan on giving the states some of the agencies, as I talked about earlier. I feel that the states can run these more efficiently, and that the states have a more flexible system of dealing with it more than the federal government does. I'd also like to consolidate agencies by attrition and cut out the agencies that we no longer need.
All right, thank you, Governor. Mr. President, we'll give you 1 minute to respond.
I guess my biggest question is how? How and what programs? It's great to have a generalized list telling us we need to do this and we need to do it, but how are we going to get there? You can tell me to get to Maine, but if you don't show me a way, it's going to be pretty hard. I think that as Americans, I think you need to question this. Don't take a generalized plan. You guys want to know the facts. He's going to cut programs. What if those programs are the ones that you guys like? You know, what if those are the ones that you depend on? I think that's an important point to think of. And that's pretty much what I have to say.
All right, we're going to move on to another topic now. Presidents for more than 4 decades have promised to make America more energy independent and reduce our demand on foreign oil. Governor, we'll start with you on this one. What are your plans to make America energy independent and make us less reliant on foreign oil, and what makes your plan credible?
If I am kept in opposite ears, you will see independent of other energies outside the United States by 2020. This is how I'm going to do that. First of all, a moderator asked me how I plan on doing that, what has changed, so that makes this plan credible. We have now access to a lot more technologies and fuel sources that were either economically viable or not even we knew existed at the time. Marcellus shale, natural gas, and other pipelines that we can bring in are key features to bringing in and making sure that we can be energy dependent, something we've never looked at before because they never existed. As we need to be looking at energies like Marcellus shale, coal, natural gas, and offshore drilling is something I also want to promote. As bringing in the pipelines, there is a pipeline in Pennsylvania called the Keystone Pipeline. If we legislate that, unlike the Obama administration, which has already vetoed it, we would bring in 10,000 jobs in Pennsylvania immediately, the day it's vetoed, or excuse me, the day it's brought in. Also, I'd like to bring in the Canadian pipeline, which is another thing that the Obama administration has vetoed and prevented from coming in. I'd also point out that the Obama administration talks about bringing in, he discusses energy, but over the past 4 years, we have seen a 40% cut in federal loans, or excuse me, in federal land permits for these land sections that companies or the federal government is using to get their oil. We have seen a decreased productivity in energy that is brought in locally and, and domestically. I'd also like to streamline permits and simplify the code for receiving these. That way, these companies can more quickly they are able to take advantage of the lands that they have taken property of and are able to get the energy out of them. And finally, I'd also like to make sure, that regulations are cut back for industries like coal, where red tape and all these regulations are pushing them back and are preventing them from getting all the necessary, or getting the energy efficiency out that we could be getting out of things like coal.
Mr. President, we will give you 1 minute to respond to the governor's statements.
He said that we would have 10,000 jobs in natural gas by the Keystone Pipeline. My program has brought in 600,000 jobs from Marcellus shale already with the legislation I passed. He said I've cut land permits, and I think that's an interesting point to touch on because the truth of that is that companies had multiple land permits that they were just sitting on, weren't really using them, were using one site and kind of had these on, back just for whenever they needed them. So we decided if you're not going to use them, then we're going to cut them. And we'll give them to those companies that are going to use them. As regulations for coal, I think it's important to remember that we are a part of a larger system. The environment, the climate, we depend on that. We just can't keep taking and taking from coal. It's not a renewable resource. Why use all of our energy on that when it's going to run out? Let's invest in other things, renewable energy, clean energy.
All right, Mr. President, we'll give you 3 minutes to, again, answer the question. What are your plans to make America energy independent, and what makes your plan credible? And again, 3 minutes.
I think it's necessary, like I said, everybody knows that we depend heavily on coal and oil. It's the energy source of the day. However, oil and coal are fossil fuels. They're not replaced by any means as fast as we use them. And about the United States, we probably have about 50 years left of usable coal. We about have 100 years left of natural gas. And as I said in my rebuttal, I've created over 600,000 jobs from the natural gas legislation I've already passed. In addition, these natural gas jobs that are being created need to be filled by people that have majors in geology, environmental biology, and in sciences, individuals like yourself that go here at Clarion University. So what's different? What are we going to do for tomorrow? Clean and renewable energy. I think it's important that we develop these sources, such as wind, solar, and nuclear energy. I've created over 85,000 jobs in Iowa alone from wind. Friend, one point that me and Governor Romney do share is that reaching our own independence. We need to be independent of other nations. And my plan aims to do that by 50% cut by the year 2012, similar to Governor Romney. So I guess, what would Romney do? Well, what Romney didn't tell you is that he would give an additional tax cut to big oil corporations. This tax cut is $4 billion. They make so much money already, and you want to continue to give them more. That would literally cut the money that's needed to invest in renewable resources, such as wind, solar, and nuclear, in half, and leave us at a standpoint of, we're using it now, we'll worry about it later. Those individuals that will worry about it later are our children, our younger siblings, and our children's children. Why not tackle the problem now when we can do it now and we're not in dire need of it? We still have the resources to use coal and oil, but let's plan for tomorrow, today.
All right, Governor Romney, we'll give you 1 minute for a rebuttal. Thank you. First of all, I would like to clarify that I only used the Keystone example as an example for Pennsylvania. and it shouldn't be comparative to something like the 6,000 jobs that are created federally. I'd also like to talk about taking these permits. I find it wrong and perhaps reprehensible that he's able to just take these permits from these companies, and instead of having them a slight chance in some world of working and capitalizing on that, they now have zero chance. Also, he talked about tax cuts to oil companies and how we need, and how I give subsidies, or my plan would give subsidies to places like oil. I'd like to point out that under the Obama administration, $90 billion has been squandered on companies like Solaris, which have been green energies that have failed. And if Mr. Obama believes that we are 100 years away from a natural gas decline and coal is 50 years away, we can continue using those energy sources for at least 100 years. We can continue using those energy sources until the technology and the economics become more viable to switch over to other energies.
All right, we're going to move on to another topic now, and of course it has been a big staple of both of your administrative records so far. Now, many have claimed that each of your health care plans are the same, but you both have stressed the differences between them. So we'll make it clear here for everyone tonight. Mr. President, we'll start with you. What are the differences between your plan and Governor Romney's?
I think this is an interesting topic. I think a lot of people want to know what Obamacare does. What are the things that go along with it? Well, first, it allows children to be covered under their parents' insurance up to their 26. Someone cannot be denied because of a pre-existing condition. If you get sick while you're covered on insurance, you can no longer be dropped. There's no lifetime caps. Any preventative medical exams, such as pap smears and prostate checks, are now free. Small businesses that have 50 or more employees are now required to have insurance. However, the insurance will be offered to the federal government, allowing them to save money on premium cost. If you have less than 50 employees, you now have the option to get health care. And the government will provide subsidies to help these small businesses purchase health care for their employees. Now, a lot of people are like, I'm not sure if this plan is going to work. This plan is actually based off a successful plan that was instituted in Massachusetts. It has 98% of their citizens covered. And in a survey, they reported being happier with this health insurance than the prior. In addition, I think one factor that kind of gets people upset is the mandate that you have to have health insurance. You have to wear a seatbelt in a car. And why is that? Because it's meant to save you in case you are in an accident. And then people are like, well, what about the cost? I'm not sure if I'm going to pay for it. And I looked up a specific example. So you're a family of three, a mom and two kids. If you make under $26,000 a year, you're within a certain percentage of the poverty line. You will be covered by an extension of Medicare. You will be provided free health insurance. Now, if you make less than $76,000 a year, you will be provided government subsidies to aid in the purchase of health care. And if you make over $76,000 a year for a family of three, you are going to pay for health care on your own. Now, let's be honest. If you're making over $76,000 a year with one parent, I'm pretty sure you can afford a generalized health plan. Now, what happens if you don't purchase insurance? People said there's a fine. The fine for the first year is $95, going up and increasing each year that you are not covered by insurance. So what would Governor Romney do? Governor Romney would go back to a voucher plan that allows insurance companies to set their own rates and to drop you if you get sick on their program. Isn't that when you need your health insurance the most, is when you're sick? You pay for it, and then you get sick, and they're like, oh, you're costing us too much money, goodbye? That's not what health insurance is about. So I think that's one important things to think about.
All right, Governor, we'll give you 1 minute to respond to what the President has just said.
Thank you. I'd first like to address that he was discussing the extension of health care and how you get free health care. The Obamacare has taken out of Medicare $700 billion. So I asked Mr. Obama, where is he getting all this money to give out free health care to individuals? Also, we discussed this fine earlier, about a $95 fine that's also increasing over time. I'd like to ask, what happens and how much are they paying if they have to switch over to Obamacare or any other kind of health care plan? According to his record, we've shown a $3,000 increase in health care over the last 4 years under Obamacare. So we're looking at a $95 fine or something at least $3,000 for a whole family to be able to support themselves. Now, obviously, something like this is going to be ineffective because people would rather either they would take it or they would find a plan that would be cheaper. I'd also like to point out that the Medicare bank will be bankrupt the way the system is established now by 2024, leaving
All right,
individuals
Governor,
over...
well, let's cut you off here. We'll give you 3 minutes here. Let me restate the question for everybody again. What are the differences between your plan and the president's? And again, 3 minutes.
First of all, on day one I'm in office, we're going to start repealing Obamacare. This is critical to making sure that we can bring back competition among healthcare companies and drive costs down. I would agree with Mr. Obama that having pre-existing conditions and being able to still get health insurance is a good idea. I believe that's true. However, I also believe that healthcare should not be controlled by federal government or someone sitting behind a desk. It should be controlled by patients and doctors alike. Also, I'm not asking necessarily for vouchers. What I'm asking for the federal government is to release regulations that hold back local health insurance providers and allow them to compete locally at a level instead of having their costs set by the federal government, as is the plan now. I'd also like to protect Medicare for people over 55. As I mentioned in my rebuttal, Medicare will be, as it is now, will be bankrupt by 2024 if we continue this trend of supporting Obamacare. And this all comes back to the fundamental point I've been making throughout this debate, is that Mr. Obama continues on spending money and doesn't know where to get it. And this includes the things like bringing back and taking $700 billion from Medicare in order to pay for Obamacare, and giving free health insurance out to families who over the course of the Obama administration have only gotten larger, considering we've been out of jobs and we've only seen a decrease in the economy.
All right, Mr. President, I'll give you 1 minute to respond to the governor's statements.
I'd like to talk about competition. The states are required to set up an online program that allows their citizens to see all of the programs that are offered in their state, creating competition, driving insurance companies to keep premiums low. Under this voucher program, he wants people to pay for health care, but what about those families that can't afford it? What about somebody who doesn't make enough to afford health care? Are they not supposed to go? Are their kids not supposed to go? Somebody can't be denied medical access when they go to the ER room. So you know what happens if they don't have a home address or they're homeless? That falls back on taxpayers. That bill is then ours. This provides everybody with the basic need to be able to go to the doctor and get checkups, to make sure their little kids are okay. It's important to make sure that all Americans are treated equal, while some have a lot and others have none. It's not equality.
All right, we're going to move on to our last topic of the night. Now, there's been a debate among Americans on a number of social issues, and so we're going to bunch them all together into one question. So we're going to deal with women's rights, abortion, and LGBT rights as well. Governor, this question will go to you first. Should a woman have the right to choose whether or not she can have an abortion? Should gays and lesbians be allowed to marry? And should these decisions be made on a state or national level? And you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'll address them one at a time, and I'll begin with the topic of the pro-life versus pro-choice debate and the topic of abortion. The religion that I've grown up in has taught me, and I've been led to believe that life begins at conception. And it's not a matter, as in the case with pro-choice, of whether or not the fetus should still exist or not, but whether or not we are giving life or death to an individual. I believe this supersedes any kind of rights and other rights we can extrapolate from our pro-life to a pro-choice debate. And that's the topic we need to be discussing. And that's the topic to make sure that we keep pro-life as an extensive measure in order to appreciate that we have more lives down the road, instead of having the moral chance of causing lives to perish under the pro-choice plan. Onto the topic of gay marriage. Under the religious doctrine that I've been raised, I believe that gay marriage is marriage in itself is a sacred tradition that needs to be protected. However, I would agree that gay couples should be able to get the rights and the same tax rights and other rights like these as married couples. The problem that it comes down to at the fundamental level is discerning the definition of marriage. That's the problem that is less understood, and that's something we need to be examining in how we create future tax plans and create future differentiations in how we assess couples in a social structure when we create policy. Finally, I believe you talked about female opportunities. I'd like to address that I believe there is a glass ceiling that exists when I was governor of Massachusetts, I noticed a disproportionate amount of male and female congressmen that were within my Congress. So I talked to a local organization that were able to give me a binder of qualifications and of these different individuals of women who they believed deserved to be in Congress. And I've looked at this list, and since then, I've had the highest amount, or during my governorship, I've had the highest amount of women in my Congress, more so than any other state. And I support women's rights, and since then, I greatly appreciate the fact that these women talk to me, and the people that they have brought in have been highly effective.
All right, Mr. President, we'll give you a minute for a rebuttal.
I'd like to highlight on what Governor Romney said. He said creating differentiation, determining things that are, establishing that we are different, as he talked about the subject of gay marriage. When you determine that something is different, it's not the same. There's not a level of equality. If I'm correct, I believe that you have brought up the point of being a religious matter. I believe your religious affiliation is a Mormon, correct? So you are allowed to be married to more than one wife, correct?
In the traditional sense you are, but not as much
So
anymore.
I propose this to you. He's allowed to be married to more than one woman, but yet a loving gay couple cannot be married to them only to one another. Does that seem fair? Does that seem like something that the American people are going to support, where somebody can marry as many people as they want, or in a reasonable fashion, shouldn't say everybody, but then other people can't marry each other at all? Because they, on a religious level, do not feel that's right. I don't believe that's right at all.
All right, Mr. President, we'll ask you the same question again, bunching everything together here. Should a woman have the right to choose whether or not she can have an abortion? Should gays and lesbians be allowed to marry? And should these decisions be made on a state or national level? And you have 3 minutes.
First, I'd like to bring up the subject of abortion. I feel like the abortion subject is something that should refrain from politics. I feel like that is a woman's choice that should be discussed between her and her doctor or her family physician. In regards to some of the things that this other viewpoint that Governor Romney has said, I just want to bring up a few points. Richard Murdoch, which is Governor Romney's U.S. Senate endorsement, has said that pregnancies resulting from rape are something that God intended. In addition, Paul Ryan, his vice president, has said that rape is a method of conception, and he is co-sponsoring a bill to redefine the term rape with Todd Atkins, who also made the statement of legitimate rape. Representative Steve King, which is his partner in Washington, said he's never heard of anyone getting pregnant from statutory rape or incest. Now, I guess you asked me, what is the point of bringing those things up? It's the view of his party and the people that he is empowering on their view on women. I think that says a lot, trying to redefine rape and saying that a baby from rape is something that God intended. We are men, and we do not have any right to say that women, in this case, and this case across the board, should be forced to keep a baby. That's a woman's choice. It's her body. As far as the LGBT community goes, I support gay marriage. If you are a loving couple that has a family and are committed to one another, I have no say in that. If you support one another, that is you. That affects my religious beliefs, my relationship, not at all. That's like saying you eating a cheeseburger affects me dieting. That doesn't make sense.
All right, Governor, we'll give you 1 minute for a rebuttal.
Thank you. First up on the topic of women's choice, under the Mormonism and Catholicism and all these other religious institutions, it's not about a choice, it's about the right to live. And all of these decisions are superseded by the fact that when we look at the position, it's a decision to allow someone to live or to allow someone to be murdered. And that's what I want to clarify as the position of when I take pro-life. Also, on the topic of opposing, or Mr. Obama has put forward a couple people that I'm familiar with who have these either these claims or they have Mr. Ryan. I'm not familiar exactly with what the intention of his redefinition of the word rape is, but that's something I'd like to look at. And also, I'd like to address that Mr. Obama, what the tactic is using right now is something called poisoning the well, where he associates people with me in order to make my arguments look weaker. The problem with that is that Mr. Obama, as my record has shown, my own record, that I have been behind gay rights and I have been opposed to gay marriage. And that's a clear difference I want to make. That's what we need to change.
All right, well, we're at the point now where each candidate has the opportunity to make a final statement, and we'll give President Obama the first opportunity.
To end, I would first like to thank all of you Clarion students for coming out. The future is yours, and it's so important to understand how you want to shape it. For as long as this great nation has existed, there have been people flocking to this country with nothing more than an American dream and trying to create a life for themselves. Some politicians think that America's value doesn't lie with their tired, with their poor, or their huddled masses, but I think we all know that's not true. This country was built from the middle out. It was built on the working hands of every citizen. Challenges still face this nation, but the change is happening right now, and I want all of you guys to be a part of it. What is your dream for the future? If it involves equality for all citizens, regardless of gender, creed, or sexual orientation, then have hope. If it involves strengthening our middle class with affordable education and much-needed jobs, then have hope. If it involves handing a nation down to our children that you are proud to support and keep safe, then have hope. And thank you.
All right, Governor Romney, you have an opportunity now for a final statement.
Thank you. First of all, as Mr. Obama said, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out and seeing us tonight. I'd like to clarify the differences between Mr. Obama's plan and I, and I'd like people to understand why the plan I've taken is so important and why I believe it's better than Mr. Obama's plan. Mr. Obama discusses rights and the ability to be in education. I'd like to point out that the plan that I have proposed is all centered around the fact that we need to cut back the fat and be able to grow our economy. If we were in a world, as Mr. Obama is putting forward, where we are without jobs and everybody's without jobs, if we're in a world where the middle class cannot afford to live in their homes, or if the middle class cannot be able to afford, or they have inadequate health care, or if they're in a world where our economy is so low that we're faced with an economic crash, none of the other proposals that Mr. Obama puts forward matter. They don't matter in a world where we cannot even get the simplest of jobs or be able to sustain ourselves at a most basic level. And that's the primary thing we need to be focusing on in this election.
All right, gentlemen, I want to thank you both for participating here in tonight's debate. I want to thank you all for attending tonight's debate. And again, we hope that this was informative for you in making a decision on November 6th, next Tuesday. So be sure to go out and vote. You can vote in Marwick Boyd Fine Arts Center on campus. You can also vote in Reinhardt Villages if you live out there. So again, you can catch tonight's debate on CUTV tomorrow at 5 p.m. As a recap of everything. It's Channel 5 on campus, Channel 15 off campus. And so again, I want to thank you both for participating in tonight's debate, and have a good night.